साल 2020 में अमेरिका की एक मल्टीनेशनल टेक कंपनी सिस्को पर कुछ आरोप लगे। कैलिफोर्निया के सिविल राइट्स डिपार्टमेंट ने इस कंपनी पर एक आरोप लगाया कि यहाँ के 2 इंजीनियर्स ने जो अपर कास्ट थे, उन्होंने एक दलित एम्प्लॉई के साथ कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन किया, उसे अनइक्वल पे दिया और उसके लिए जो अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ थी वो भी कम रखी। ये केस जो है बहुत धीरे धीरे बड़ा बनता चला गया। इसने यूएस में जो एंटी कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन मूवमेंट है उसको फ्यूल किया। सोशल मीडिया पर बहुत सारी डिबेट्स हुई और इस केस के केंद्र में 2 लोग थे, सुंदर अय्यर और रमन्ना कोम्पेला। ये जो एम्प्लॉइज़ थे, इनमें से एक सुंदर अय्यर थे, वो IIT बॉम्बे से पास आउट हैं और जिस दलित एम्प्लॉई की बात हो रही है वो भी उनके बैचमेट रहे हैं, IIT बॉम्बे से पास आउट थे। दोनों 2 दशक पहले 90s में IIT बॉम्बे से पढ़कर US अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ के लिए चले गए थे। ये केस 21 में चला, 22 में चला और 23 के अप्रैल में आते आते जो वहाँ का कोर्ट था, वहाँ पर कैलिफोर्निया के सिविल राइट्स डिपार्टमेंट ने ये जो केस था, इसमें इंजीनियर्स के खिलाफ जो लॉ सूट था वो वापस ले लिया, विड्रॉ कर लिया। इस केस की जो ट्रायल रही उसमें भी बहुत सारे एलिगेशंस और काउंटर एलिगेशंस लगे थे। लेकिन एक चीज़ और हुई यूएस में, वहाँ पर 2 ग्रुप्स एक्टिव हो गए। एक ग्रुप ऐसा था, इक्वालिटी लैब जो है उसने दलितों के राइट्स को लेकर बहुत अवेयरनेस क्रिएट की, और एक दूसरा ग्रुप था द हिंदू अमेरिकन फाउंडेशन। उसने हिंदूज़ की जो आइडेंटिटी है उसे एक आइडेंटिटी मानकर इस केस में भी मदद की और वो पूरे अमेरिका में हिंदूज़ के राइट्स, उनके खिलाफ हो रहे डिस्क्रिमिनेशन पर बात उठाते हैं। तो पैरेलली ये 2 आंदोलन अभी वहाँ पर चल रहे हैं। लेकिन इस केस में जो सेंट्रल रहे सुंदर अय्यर, जिन पर ये आरोप लगे कि उन्होंने अपने बैचमेट, IIT बॉम्बे के बैचमेट की जाति पता होने की वजह से उनके साथ ये डिस्क्रिमिनेशन किया, वो हमारे साथ हैं। वो अपनी साइड ऑफ द स्टोरी रखने आए हैं। वेलकम टू द प्रिंट मिस्टर सुंदर। माई फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू इज़, what is your side of the story? We have read so much about the case and it's there on Twitter, on social media. It has divided people, it has divided communities within US and India. But what is your side of the story?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Jyoti, for having me, and thanks to ThePrint. I just want to preface this by saying the most important thing for me is the truth. The truth is more important than winning. I keep the truth at a higher priority than winning at any given time. I've come here to have a conversation and a dialogue, not to say that I'm right or wrong. I want to share purely objective data and facts. Now, you asked what is my side of the story. There is a lot to unpeel here. यहाँ पे बोलने के लिए बहुत कुछ है.
We can start with the first allegation that you discriminated against your Dalit batchmate from IIT Bombay.
Sure. Let me start with discrimination because that's what you started with. John Doe, जो मेरे बैचमेट है, उनका नाम we will refer to as John Doe क्योंकि उसने anonymously फाइल किया. वो कह रहे कि उनका आइडेंटिटी रिवील होगा तो उनके साथ वायलेंस होगा, उनके फैमिली के साथ वायलेंस होगा, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. He has lost that in court in November of 2023. The judge ruled against anonymity. But my focus here is not John Doe. There can be employees who file cases. That's okay. My focus here will be on the California Civil Rights Department that is essentially running the case against us, filing it on behalf of John Doe. So the first thing, and when I say John Doe or Civil Rights Department, I'll refer to them as CRD.
Yes, let's call them CRD.
CRD. So CRD, since John Doe went to the CRD said that you have discriminated against John Doe. And we said, on what basis? They said, he didn't get the head of engineering position in my group. Now, in my group, there were 3 leadership positions. Remember, I was running a technology startup which was funded by Cisco. Within Cisco. So Cisco basically has this thing जहाँ वो startup के लिए funding देते हैं. You go out for 2 years, you do things. If things go well, you get reacquired. These are called spin-ins. And so I was running a startup that was funded by Cisco. It later on became fully part of Cisco in 2018. So when I started the company, this was roughly September of 2015. We hired John Doe. He joined roughly.
तो इस कहानी की शुरुआत 2015 में ही हो जाती है.
और 2016 में I had hired multiple leadership positions, जो top level leaders है.
Did you advertise for them or you just hired them on?
It's a combination of both. You advertise, but it's not like something you put it in a newspaper. It comes on a Cisco website. It's an open advertisement that you're looking for these positions, and then you hire. So there were 3 leadership positions. The second leadership position was the head of engineering position in my group. John Doe did not get that position, and he claimed discrimination. So we told the CRD, आप किस basis में discrimination बोल रहे हो? Because John Doe has never applied for the position.
But क्या उस पोस्ट के लिए एप्लीकेशन मंगवाई गई थी, ये मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ.
Absolutely, it was an open position. It was open for almost 3 months. Not only was it open.
And how many people applied for it and who got it?
I'm trying to recall, but I think on average at least about 10 to 15 candidates we were looking at a level, and probably even more had applied. Not only had people applied, John Doe and my whole engineering team were part of the interviewing committee. Everyone knew who's applying and who wants to get that position. So it's very clear that it's not just an open position. It was available for anyone who applied. He had never applied for the job and he claimed discrimination. The CRD didn't care. Said, हमने पूछा आप क्यों कर रहे हो ऐसे? They couldn't care.
लेकिन कई बार कॉर्पोरेट में ऐसा होता है कि आपने कोई एप्लीकेशन मंगवाई और आपने उन 7 या 8 कैंडिडेट्स का इंटरव्यू किया, लेकिन आपने उनमें से किसी को नहीं लिया, एंड यू अवॉर्डेड दैट पोजीशन टू समबडी यू न्यू और समबडी हु केम विद अ रेफरेंस. सो फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर पोजीशन इन इंजीनियरिंग डिपार्टमेंट, वो जो उन्होंने ये क्लेम किया कि उन्हें नहीं दी गई, तो वो किसको दी गई, मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ.
Actually, you asked a very beautiful question, Jyoti. In fact, the position was offered to 2 people in priority order. And we told this to the CRD. The first person who was given that position happens to be another candidate, a senior of mine, a brilliant man. I've co-founded companies with him, who also happens to be a Dalit. He identifies as a Dalit. And we told the CRD that you want to sue us for Dalit discrimination for a position that was first, not like second or fifth or eighth candidate ke baad, was first and primarily offered to another senior person that I hired, who also happened to be Dalit. But the CRD couldn't care. They hid all of that information from the judge, from the court, from the press, from the activists, and a lot more. I'll come to your second question on low pay. But just to summarize the discrimination claim, I am California's primary example of caste discrimination for having given every leadership position of mine to another senior Dalit colleague. If that is not irony, I don't know what is. But I'll leave your viewers to that. Your second question was on low pay.
Yes.
I've been in Silicon Valley for about 20 plus years. Run 4 tech startups. I was probably about 199 pounds at some point, stressed, working 80 hours a week. But you know, life is exciting when you're doing a startup. In this startup, I told Cisco that I would give away all of my equity, all of my CEO equity, which would be worth at least of the order of tens of millions of dollars, to all of my employees, including John Doe, my batchmate John Doe.
But this was done before the discrimination, before advertising for that post of heads in 3 different departments.
Oh, yeah, it was in fact done when I set up the company, when I hired John Doe.
Yes.
I had already
this was
given
done way before the
one year before. Exactly. So to give you some dates, September 2015, when I set up the company, I basically wrote all of my equity away to my employees. I hired John Doe in October of 2015, and at the same time of his hiring, I had of course given parts of my equity to all my employees, including John Doe. John Doe had a package worth several millions of dollars.
You mean to say that if you were discriminating against John Doe, you would have done it earlier when you had the opportunity to discriminate against him,
or
you
even
would have excluded that person from the equity share?
Well, even worse, I would chosen him not even to hire him. Look, in Silicon Valley, you are hiring at a rapid pace. If I chose to discriminate against a Dalit, I don't have to hire a Dalit. The allegation here in the case is that I'm aware that John Doe is a Dalit. If I'm aware that John Doe is a Dalit, why would I invite him to my company if I want to discriminate against him? That doesn't add up, right? The logic doesn't add up, right? I could go and hire people.
But did you work with him before you invited him to work with your startup?
I have not worked with him in a professional environment. I've only known him from my undergrad days.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense, and I'll give you what I've done for John Doe, and I'll give you a sense of the experience from other people's perspective, because I want to give you objective facts, not my subjective views. But just off the bat, when I hired John Doe, I showered him with, of course, equity.
Yeah.
I showered him. Sorry, go ahead.
He was a part of the group that got the benefits of equity shares.
Of course,
Like,
yeah. All of my.
only one, yeah.
Oh yeah, all of my employees.
All of
Yeah.
employees.
I mean, that said, I gave him more equity than Ramana Kompila, who joined at the same time. But those are details that are of secondary importance, right? But he was showered with equity. He was given the highest joint grade in my group as a principal engineer. He was given a ton of leadership opportunities.
So that
in the
means
group.
he had merit. He was getting all these appraisals and positions and equity shares because based on his merit, not on his connection with you.
In 100%, my hiring is based on merit. You want to hire the single best people for any job, at least what you believe are the best people for every job, right? John Doe, I have not known John Doe much beyond my IIT days. When I hired him, I stood up for him. I said, hey, I know him. I didn't know him too well. I said, I know him. It's all good. Let's get on with life. He had a 20-year history in Silicon Valley and in India, and he had a resume of doing X, Y, Z, and T. So I said, chalo, let's hire him. I have had no opportunity to actually test his merit on the job, competence, architectural capabilities, algorithmic capabilities and stuff. I didn't know that because I've never actually worked with him. But I took that on trust, right? Because you're hiring at a rapid pace in Silicon Valley, and at some point you run with it. So what I will focus on to answer your question on merit is our direct experiences with John Doe, right? First of all, so I not only hired him, I trusted him, I gave him leadership positions, I gave him people and personal, right? You bring, my whole team was flat, they all reported to me, but I would take my hires and give them to my different leads. So let me just give you a sense of things that have happened that the Civil Rights Department, CRD, has suppressed. In December of 2015, 2 months within his hiring, to January 15th of 2015, there were several complaints on John Doe by my senior most personnel in the startup, including my founders. 2 different folks complained about him almost about 11 to 12 times on different aspects of his work and work ethics. It's just facts I'm giving you, and these are facts based on information records that the CRD knows. I want to be very careful here that I'm not giving you any subjective piece of information. Ye meri opinion nahi hai, I'm just giving you facts. In February, there were complaints from his own team running user interface. In March, there were complaints of...
This is on record.
This is all on record. I mean, this is all information that the Civil Rights Department knows, right? These are HR records, details,
emails,
complaints coming from other people, and some of them are verbal complaints that I've documented and told the CRD, please go and interview these people. Don't take my word for it. I may be the biggest caste discriminator on the planet. Please do not believe me. Go talk to these people. They refuse to do that, right? We've had 3 women engineers who complained on John Doe. Some of them wrote beseeching complaints. Some of them were in tears, telling me, please take me out of John Doe. We've had a Hispanic engineer who complained about John Doe working in John Doe's team. I've had an Asian engineer complaining about John Doe working in John Doe's team, saying, please get me out of John Doe's team.
So he didn't get the position for the head of engineering department based on his performance throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, at some point I have to make hard decisions, right? A head of engineering position is not a laddu, right? I mean, for your Hindi audience, it's not a laddu, it's not a peda, it's not free. When you appoint someone to a head of engineering position, it's not just the technology. Remember, we've got to perform. We were a startup. If the product doesn't work, all of my employees make no money.
Yes.
Everyone's equity is based on joint performance. But leave that aside for a minute. Remember, when you put somebody as head of engineering, they manage people. Human interactions and management are critical. When you have senior employees, junior employees, my founder in the company, and other senior engineers all complaining about John Doe, how do I give him the head of engineering position? Under what ethical standard will I send someone?
The other Dalit person who got that position, did he testify in your favor in the court?
We've not even reached that stage, but here's the funniest part. What the CRD has hidden is my other senior Dalit colleague in my group was one of the first people when he joined. He spent 3 weeks and gave me critical feedback on John Doe, took John Doe out for dinner, gave him some of the most blunt and direct feedback. John Doe has a history of insubordination, all documented. The senior Dalit leader comes to me on October 31st, 2016 and says, Sundar, I cannot handle John Doe. John Doe is insubordinate. John Doe is making allegations against me. John Doe makes my life hell. What do? I want your Hindi audience to know this. I want your audience in India to know this. What do? I tell my senior Dalit leader, I will handle him. I will take the adversity. I will take his behavior. Let's have you live life well and you go do your work. My job as a leader is to stand up for my people. My job as a leader is to come first in the day to work, leave last, take all the brickbats, give the bouquets to my people, take no credit, and make sure that they succeed.
So when you had all the documents, all the evidence with you,
yes,
you knew the case is going to fall flat in the court.
Yes, of course we do. Yes, but my issue...
And it did.
Of course, they've dropped the case against us because we filed a motion to sanction. Just to put this in simple terms, the Civil Rights Department has done a number of things which is wrong. And let me peel the onion in about 6 layers, if you will. Let's start with the smallest lies. If you look at their lawsuit, right, they make a number of claims that are simply not true. Right? Oh, John Doe was the lone Dalit. Mr. Iyer's team was entirely Indian. They have the HR records. There are so many people who are not Indian. We have Americans, we have Asians, we have Taiwanese, we have Pakistanis. We have so many different people. We have white Europeans. We've had a diverse team. 20% of my team was outsourced into Romania, by the way. But that's details. At level 2, you have claims without a legal or factual basis. Let me give you an example. The CRD claims that Ramana Kompella, my other colleague, harassed John Doe. Ab harassment charges kya hai? What is the only claim on Ramana Kompella after 8 years? It's 2024 right now. 9 साल होने का है कि Ramana Kompella ने John Doe को weekly status reports करने के लिए बोला है. Now, I'm not a physicist who believes in the infinite universe theory, but I don't know one parallel universe जहाँ पे if a manager asks their employee कि boss weekly status report दे दीजिए, that's considered harassment. Harassment is a very serious charge. You have to call somebody the N-word or something really bad or say some gandhi vyavahar to be accused of harassment. It's not a joke to be accused of harassment. So that claim has no legal basis, right? So we sued, we basically filed a motion to sanction the CRD saying, what kind of charges are you doing? It's like if I went to drink water, that's not a harassment charge, right? You have to have some basis to claim harassment. They have none. Okay?
ऐसे बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल रहे आपके केस में. सीआरडी ने अपना जो लॉ सूट आप दोनों के खिलाफ था वो वापस ले लिया, लेकिन सिस्को के खिलाफ वो बोल रहे हैं they are going to fight for that case.
Yes, of course. Yes. Yeah, they are. They're still fighting. Correct.
But what are you trying to fix now? Now that you have been cleared of, not being cleared, but at least the case is now scrapped.
Yes.
So what are you trying to do now?
Yeah, so I'm beyond being cleared of charges, right? They actually dropped the case, which is even better than even going to a judge. But to me, well, 2 things. In my mind, I'm still in the case. Cisco is one of the most wonderful companies for someone to work for. Okay, there are lots of Silicon Valley companies and different kinds of companies, but I've known Cisco inside out for 20 plus years, and it has one of the most wonderful cultures to help people and enable them grow. Nothing is perfect anyway.
But you are no longer with Cisco.
I'm no longer with Cisco, but I feel a moral obligation. Either my company defends itself or I defend my company. it doesn't matter that I'm a single individual and my company is a $300 billion company. You have to fight for injustice. I believe, and I have objective data and proof, that the CRD has committed crimes equivalent to the Watergate scandal. If you look at the Watergate scandal that happened in the 1970s, what the Civil Rights Department is doing is much, much worse. And my case is just one example, but there are several other cases in Silicon Valley.
Who they are working for and working against for?
Who is CRD working for and against? Look, I don't want to speculate. What I want to offer is objective data of what the CRD has done. So let me give you some more objective data for your viewers, right? So let's take an example. So I give an example of the second level, right? Claims with no legal or factual basis. Now, let me give you one thing that they have claimed, which is what we call reckless indifference to the truth. Floor number 3, if you will. The CRD claims that John Doe was isolated. Isolate kar diya, usko, dur rakh diya, right? Let us go through this claim, and I will give you only objective data. तो ये बंदा बोलता है कि मुझे isolate किया गया, 1.5 years के लिए. Let me work through this.
You must have felt isolated and alienated.
You can feel as isolated as you want, right? But what is an isolation claim? Let's go through this. I ask John Doe कि बॉस हम 2 ग्रुप बना रहे हैं, साउथबाउंड एंड नॉर्थबाउंड इंजीनियरिंग. एक रमना लीड कर रहा है, एक दूसरा सुपरवाइजर लीड कर रहा है, राघवन करके. आपको कौन सा ग्रुप में जाना है, right? Because everything has to work cleanly, right? ये 2 organizations say they will work blah whatever. I actually give him my organization. I said you should belong to this team, the northbound group, which was led by Raghavan. He refused. He said नहीं, मैं उससे superior हूँ, ये हूँ, whatever, right? He refused. He basically refused the change in the organization, right? ठीक है, आपको राघवन से काम नहीं करना. We lost 1 full week because, and John Doe does this a lot. When he refuses, he has his ego. That's his issue. I have nothing to say on that. But he refused. This is on record. Then I said, ठीक है, work under Ramana's group. We spent 4 to 5 days, and he refused. ठीक है. So what do I do next? I say, okay, you don't want to work in any of these teams. आपको hierarchy नहीं चाहिए. क्योंकि these 2 guys would be directly under me, right? By the way, everybody reported to me still managerially. तो मैं बोला, ठीक है, आप central architect बन जाओ. आपको दोनों से काम नहीं करना, आप architect बनो. And that was part of what he wanted to do anyway. Okay, next, we started working with him. My technical program manager, it's a lady, wonderful lady. She starts assigning tasks, right? He refuses to work with her. She is complaining about John Doe throughout 2017. ये बंदा उसको काम नहीं करना है. He doesn't want to come for daily stand-ups, which is software coding में जो लोग आते हैं साथ में. He doesn't want to do features. So she's complaining about him. All 3 folks are complaining. He's not working any group. So I sent him an email. I said, John Doe, do you want to discuss your career and what you would like to do? He doesn't respond. He says, in fact, he responds. He says, I don't want to be discussing anything with you.
Now that he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, and that's why I'm saying these are all on email. He responds and he says, I don't want to be.
Submit all these emails to the court.
CRD. The CRD has more than, I would say, 100 box folders worth of information. 100. They have hidden records for more than 1 year before he complained and more than 1.5 years after he complained. For what, I do not know. Not only will they hide these records.
लेकिन मैं बहुत क्यूरियस हूँ जानने के लिए कि वहाँ का सिविल राइट्स डिपार्टमेंट भारत के जो हिंदू हैं उनकी आइडेंटिटी पॉलिटिक्स में उसे क्यों इतना इंटरेस्ट है? क्या फॉल्ट लाइंस हैं अमेरिका में हिंदू आइडेंटिटी की पॉलिटिक्स की?
You know, this is a wonderful question, Jyoti. You should have, because the American press will not do its job, perhaps the Indian press needs to hold America accountable, right? This is the part that is most mind-boggling to me and why I am involved. Look, it's okay to be accused of something and you get slapped around.
Because the court is going to uphold the truth and your truth was upheld because the case was dropped.
Well, that doesn't mean anything. My truth was upheld because we filed a motion to sanction the lawyers. But remember, forget the courts. The courts are still a second order. You have an investigation agency called the CRD. Why are they not doing their job? Why are they suppressing information? Why are they hiding HR records? Why is it that they do not want to interview any one of the supervisors? Every supervisor in the group has complained about John Doe. My topmost leader in the group, who happens to be Dalit, has complained about John Doe, and they will not interview him. 15-minute interviews, 10 or 11 of those minutes was rank and file questions. आपका first name क्या है, last name क्या है, आपने कभी join किया? I mean, I suppose they could ask me, आप कौन से color shirt पहन रहे हो, right? It's that kind of nonsense, right? I mean, when you ask rank and file questions, and then they ask 1 or 2 questions on whether I'm religious, and they even, manipulated that.
Are you a religious person?
I have never been religious. Not only that, I have blogs from when I was a grad student back at Stanford in 1999 onwards, that I actually blogged about my irreligion. I don't believe in religion. I've actually written short stories against caste. We told them that. But they said, no, you are a Hindu Brahmin.
लेकिन आपके पूरे केस में जितना मीडिया कवरेज हुआ उसमें बार बार सेल्फ आइडेंटिफाइंग दलित, सेल्फ आइडेंटिफाइंग अपर कास्ट, ये टर्म्स बहुत यूज हुई हैं. Do you identify yourself as an upper caste person? Because by your surname, by birth, you are an upper caste Indian man.
Let me tell you this. Go read my blogs from 1998. I identify as a human, and I actually say this. I say, in a world with identities and division, the
moment you are born into a Brahmin family, you inherit all the caste capital, cultural capital, social capital. You inherit that capital.
That is their prerogative. Okay, let me clarify that. However, this is what the CRD did. The CRD defined caste as a Hindu religious identity. Okay.
But it is a Hindu.
Let me finish. And this is why I say, please wait till I give you the logical argument. The CRD defines caste as a Hindu religious identity, number 1. Number 2, the CRD interviews me on my religion and I say I'm irreligious. Okay? And number 3, they still call me Brahmin, a Hindu Brahmin. Okay? Just go through the logical chain of thought. You are a state agency. You define caste as Hindu. You define, not me, the CRD did. You interview the person who tells you they're irreligious. You hide this piece of information. You pretend you never interviewed the person and still go ahead and assign him a caste, which means you've assigned him a religion.
You are born in that caste.
Hold on.
Nobody can assign you that caste. You are born into that
This
caste.
is what I'm saying. Jyoti, just listen to what I'm trying to tell you. What the CRD did was assign me religion. Do you understand the logical train of thought I'm telling you? The CRD defines Brahmin as Hindu. The CRD defines Brahmin as Hindu, not me. They define caste as Hindu. And then they assign me a Hindu religion, which the state cannot do by law. By constitution, the state cannot violate your First Amendment rights. Worse, they didn't just violate my First Amendment rights, they interviewed me. They interviewed me and asked me, what religion do I follow? And I said, I'm religious. Go read my blogs from 20 years back. I mean, I don't have to
that
defend.
I haven't read yet.
And I don't have to defend my religion, by the way. A person can define whatever religion they are. And I've never been religious. The point I'm trying to make here is not even about caste. What I'm trying to make here is the CRD violated the First Amendment by assigning me a religion. That's all. It's a simple, clean, logical argument. That's all is what I have pointed out. And they know that.
When you say that CRD, brought religious identity in your interview, so this group who is actively supporting your case is also playing the same game. They are also playing the same politics.
Tell me what they're playing. Get to specifics. Let me precede this by one thing. Suhag Shukla is one of the...
I'm trying to, create some parallels and comparisons between Equality Lab and HAF.
Let me get to specifics, Jyoti. I'm so glad you have that in your 1.42 billion viewers, hopefully, who listen to this. I have seen 2 women on 2 sides of the spectrum. Suhag Shukla from the Hindu American Foundation and Tanmoy Soundarajan from Equality Labs. I judge people only by their direct comments and actions and nothing else. I don't care about who says what about someone. Let me tell you these 2 women that I saw from distance, by the way, in my first 2.5 years almost. You have one lady, Suhag, who is professional, she is erudite, she understands the law, she speaks softly, she speaks clearly, she communicates with facts, she takes a bunch... Let me finish. She takes all the brickbats on Twitter and more and remains with clarity on her points without attacking anybody personally. I've never seen her do that. You have Tanmoy Soundarajan. I am not going to judge her. I have no reason to judge her. But if you see what she has done, she refuses, she says she represents Dalits. In her representation of Dalits, she has all her dry tribes on Hindus. She breaks Hindus into upper and lower caste. Her prerogative, no problem. She calls upper caste Hindus as Nazi. Her prerogative, good for her. She publishes surveys, caste surveys, that are truly unscientific. She knows that. She pushes her agenda. When asked whether she is a non-profit, she refuses to answer. These are two women I have seen from the side.
Are you in any way associated with HAF?
No, actually, in fact, weirdly enough, when people ask me this and people say, oh, is HAF supporting you?
Yeah.
They are not. In fact, HAF cannot support us simply because, remember this, they cannot be in the existing lawsuit because they have no standing. This lawsuit is between the CRD and me, Kompala and Cisco, right? HAF has no standing. They can't even support us even if they wanted to. HAF is only defending Hinduism because that's what the foundation is after, right? That's their charter and focus. In this, we both are suing the CRD, and so we just joined as plaintiffs suing the same agency. Okay. And that said, I believe, and I've clarified this, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. When I look at the Hindu American Foundation, and I'm not religious by any means, I see a set of people or practicing Hindus being attacked. And I see that the points that they have raised have no loudspeaker in the media.
So when you say that Hindus are being attacked in US or any other country, do you mean that only upper castes are being attacked, or do you also include Dalits and other caste groups within Hinduism?
Look, here is the reality when you... let me first go through some objective data on what the attacks are. That will give your reader some context, right? The claim made by Equality Labs, and she has all her right to make her claim, is from some survey that she's done. She pretty much says 26% of all Dalits, which is roughly about maybe 10,000 Dalits, give or take, 10,000-ish Dalits in the United States have been physically attacked or raped or spat upon by upper caste Hindus. Upper caste Hindus or Indians in America, right? That's a claim.
Where are you quoting this from? Which
this
report?
is from the Equality Labs report.
It's there on their website?
It's there in the website, it's there in the PDF, 26% of all Dalits, right? Now that claim is being used by the CRD no less than 8 or 9 times. And I ask this question, how does a state agency do this, right? What is the survey? It's an unscientific survey. It's a web survey. It's a sample that they selected. The demographics don't match the United States. They don't verify the identity of these people who do the survey. They throw out all the people who say caste doesn't matter to them. But let's ignore all that for a minute. When I say Hindu and Indian Americans are attacked, let me give you some more information. The CRD makes a number of xenophobic comments. The CRD statements in quote, Hindus are oppressive, hostile, life is a living hell working under an Indian manager. CRD's quote. You have a state agency that makes this statement about an ethnicity. Upper caste Indians believe they're biologically superior. These are all the things they have said. They've said upper castes are violent, inherently violent against Dalits. These are all the statements that the state of California has made.
And they are referring to NCRB data, which is National Crime Records.
They're referring to NCRB data, which of course they misquote. They do not go through any of the caveats given by the NCRB. But keeping that aside, how does a state agency, let's just stick to the American context for a minute, right? Using the same court documents, the state of California says, they said that there were 250 complaints of caste discrimination, Silicon Valley, roughly technology sector alone, right? If these complaints are true, that's terrible. We must fix it. We must find the people who did bad things, slap them, send them to jail. Hey, send me to jail if I'm, guilty of caste discrimination. Please, it's okay. If shit happens, if I'm guilty, send me to jail. Why is this a civil lawsuit? I'm happy to go to jail. But you make an allegation on 250 people in Silicon Valley. 2 years later, there's not one lawsuit on any of these things. She's claimed sexual harassment based on caste. But there's not one information lawsuit, anything in public. Let me give you another example. The state of California puts a letter from 30 Dalit women engineers, right? And these 30 Dalit women engineers have made several allegations on Indian managers in the tech sector.
This is their claim.
This is their claim. All power to these Dalit engineers, right? I am equally in support of Dalit women engineers. Please work hard, do great things, become billionaires, get Nobel Prizes. We love you. Become the very best in the world. We will stand, we will clap, we will see you succeed. We will do what Ambedkar wanted for you. It's a beautiful thing. But look at the letter. Here are the claims. No specifics of what complaint was said to them, what bad things were said to them. No witnesses. No location information. No date. Let me finish. No time. क्या हुआ, कब हुआ, कैसा हुआ, किसने बताया, नाम क्या था उसका, कमेंट क्या था, कुछ नहीं. How do you take a letter like this?
तो रिपोर्ट्स उन्होंने या जिस तरह के सर्वेज उन्होंने सबमिट किए हैं उसमें कोई आपको मेरिट या उसमें कोई साइंटिफिक डेटा नज़र नहीं आ रहा. बट देन देर आर बुक्स written on Dalits in America or Dalits in any other part of the world, and सुजाता गिल्डा, सूरज येंगडे या फिर याशिका दत्त हैं, उन सब ने अपने फर्स्ट हैंड एक्सपीरियंसेस लिखे हैं. सो ये जो पिछले 10 साल में किताबें आई हैं उन्होंने दिस हैज़ इनिशिएटेड अ कॉन्वर्सेशन अराउंड दलित आइडेंटिटी इन द यूएस. सो आप उसको भी खारिज करते हो क्या?
खारिज being discard, right? I am not discarding anyone's conversation. These are all beautiful things.
Because sometimes, you know, when discrimination happens, if you are being discriminated based on your race, your religion or your caste, sometimes you cannot prove it, because what happens behind the closed doors, it's not possible to prove it in the court.
Sure, you're absolutely right. This is what I'm trying to say. I am not discarding anyone's ability to say whatever they want. This is why I said these 30 Dalit women, all power to you. I said I would love to see all of them highly successful. I would love to see their claims come out. But remember these.
आपके केस में ये बात सामने आई, क्या कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन कंपनीज में होता है?
Let me, if you
like beyond your personal battle.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm trying to answer your question.
I want to address this large, elephant in the room, that does this exist?
Look, does discrimination exist at almost every level? Do humans have biases? Do humans have prejudices? The answer is always yes to that. You remove the word caste and you put anything, race, color, religion, creed, blah, what have you. Does height discrimination exist in a dating website by women on men? The answer is yes. Remember,
I'm asking
correct
questions about caste, religion, race, etc.
And that's what I'm trying to say. By the way, there's 3 different words here. There is bias, there is prejudice, there is preference, and there is discrimination. There's actually 4 different words. Discrimination is actually a very specific word. Like, for example, when someone discriminates someone in a dating website because they might be not good looking.
So what legacy this Cisco case sets in America?
And I'm happy to answer all of those. Does it make identity politics easier or harder? I mean, for sure, look, everything gets abused. The Cisco case has already been abused by forces that don't care about the truth but want to run with allegations. I mean, we've had that for the last 3 years. For God's sake, we've had that in the legislature in California. Obviously, any set of allegations, blown up makes life only easy for identity politics. My job is to make the Cisco case a moment of change for America.
And what kind of change?
My focus is on truth. Truth in governance. I know of at least one government organization. I will not comment on others because each of them have equal levels of problems. But the one government organization I know from first-hand information, the CRD, has committed grievous crimes. That's what I want to fix. When I see things in America, things have apathy. People are too afraid of the CRD. Companies are too afraid of the CRD. People within the governance, I've written to the governor of California, I've asked him a very simple question. Are you able and willing to act? If you're able, you should be willing to act and investigate the CRD. Or are you unable? If you're unable, you're not the top dog in California, right? You have an agency that's truant. And if you're unable, then perhaps the Department of Justice should step in. In the end, I don't have a vendetta against an organization. Look, a civil rights organization can be a wonderful thing, right? It can be a force of good. It can uplift people. And it can also do the right thing when things move in a very bad way. But what the CRD does is in fact, I keep telling this, the CRD has let down the Dalits the most. My biggest fear in this journey is how badly they have let down the Dalits in America. If people want to have a Dalit identity, they have put them into a much worse situation than before.
How? So your case, this Cisco case, was greatly followed by the US media. Everybody was following up the trial, and all of a sudden it disappeared from the headlines. So did you approach the US media when you are approaching Indian publications for your side of the story, that we showcase your side of the story? So what happened in the US?
I mean, and this is part of the epiphany of what is appalling to me. Mainstream media will never report the other side. And, I've talked to the New York Times, the LA Times, Politico. I believe the Washington Post had reached out to Cisco at some point. They have access to the court records. Not one of them will ever publish, geez, every position in this group went to another Dalit candidate. Not one of them will publish a single point of skepticism. Not one of them will question the Equality Lab survey.
But why do you think that they are doing this? Why would they not publish your side of the story?
I don't know. This is the part that is most mind-boggling to me. I have always seen organizations as multiple people, and I've always felt someone somewhere has a moral, ethical, or good bone. I have not seen that. I've written to the New York Times. I said what they've done is unethical. Before SB 403, the caste law was passed, I spent a lot of time with the lady, and she coolly mentioned the allegations in the case, and that alone. One of the biggest crimes you can commit on the planet is what is called by omission.
When we say that US media is not publishing your side of the story, but in India there are people that are supporting your cause.
I have a simple question. In fact, I don't even care about people who write my side of the story. I don't care about my side of the story. I care about the truth. Imagine this. Imagine I didn't exist at all. You have a court case. You have a media that's gone to party with it, push this information in the California legislature. I have talked to California.
They have passed a law that recognizes caste as a category in discrimination.
Correct, which was then vetoed by the California governor, right? And
are you against it or you are for it?
I have a very simple view to the law. Forget the constitutional issues with the law, which should be discussed, by the way. It is terrible and it's being used to bully, right? That's all I was trying to say. Like, you should not have anybody who's a legislator should be able to look at an Equality Lab's report and understand at the most basic level that this is bad. This is terrible, right? The California judge did that. She threw out all of this survey, right? It is wrong. It is unscientific. It is based on no information. You have all these claims with no information, data, specifics, time, location, blah. The data being pushed in the United States and the constitutionality, right? My answer to you is very simple. The data...
We have settled this.
Correct.
Debate.
Now, but it's important because then the most simple thing to do for any legislature to say, let's go and gather some data. Let's go and gather it scientifically.
But the conversation had just begun. It will take years to have authentic data.
Fantastic
Maybe 10
point.
years down the line, we will have instances.
Fantastic point.
And police records.
Wonderful. This is why I think it's so good to have deep conversations, right? You just went down the chain of thought reasoning, and I commend you for that, right? Things that people don't want to do. Let's go down the chain of thought. You're absolutely right, right? So, Jyoti, you asked about we talk about two different prongs, right? You have the data behind the caste, which, as I said, the right thing to do is go gather data. But keeping that aside, you have the constitutional argument. Now, here is the constitutional argument in the United States, which is, again, a beautiful debate to have. The United States Constitution is very different from the Indian Constitution. And I'll only talk about the American Constitution for what I understand. The American Constitution has what is called equal protection. Equal protection basically says any law should not call out a particular ethnicity or country or national origin, right? That is not an excuse to not have a law that is overarching. The simple point in the United States is any form of sub-discrimination, whether it be tribal, whether it be caste, whether it be Hutus versus Tutsis, whether it be clan, whether it be kinship, whether it be, whatever have you. There are so many words that describe particular actions. Class in the UK, for example. These are all forms of discrimination. They're all captured in very broad categories that are neutral words like race, ancestry, and so on. And the reason, exactly, and the reason they exist is for two reasons, as is my understanding. Umbrella terms exist because they are so broad that any person can file, any plaintiff who had any issues can file. you're not prevented from filing today. That is the beauty. And it's a very beautiful thing in the American Constitution to think through that far. So
thank you for speaking to us. It was a long conversation,
Yeah.
but I hope we talked about so many ideas and what is happening in the US and
Yeah.
also about India.
yeah.
Thank you very much.